I'm super excited to get started with today's Friday feedback, where I'm going to be introducing you to a beautiful shop with lots of great things that we can learn from, and I'll be giving her my feedback. Hi, I'm Tracy Hugelmeyer, and I am the owner of VintagepreneurUniversity.com, where I help vintage sellers start, grow, and scale their business on Etsy. I also own my own vintage business, Rusticite, that I've had on Etsy since 2013. We're going to get started in a moment, but if you'd like to find out how to get your free review, if you sell vintage on Etsy or are thinking about it, go ahead and check out the links below. It'll show you exactly how to do that. All you have to do is become an Etsy junkie. It's free and easy. Again, the links are down below. You can also go to VintagepreneurUniversity.com. All right, really quick before we get started, a disclaimer that I always like to give, and that is make sure that you're very thoughtful when you make changes to your shop. So don't make a lot of changes at once, so that you can keep an eye on what's working and what's not working for you, and make sure that the changes that you make are on target with your brand and your business. All right, so introducing Eva with Evika. And Eva has been selling vintage on Etsy, even though it says since 2009 here. Something like didn't look right about that to me. So I did a little searching, and I could tell that since her reviews only went back to 2019, that I can safely say she's probably only been selling since about 2019, which seems a little bit more believable to me, because I looked at this and I was like, wait a minute, why does she only have 101 sales since 2009? But again, she's been only selling since 2019, and her shop just looks beautiful. I mean, look at these photos. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, I wanted to comment on the fact that she does not have a banner in her shop. But what I wanted to say about that is I think that that is perfectly okay. It's a personal choice, and it's more about the overall look and feel of your shop, and if you are, getting your branding across. And her shop is very clean cut, and I really love that, and has a really identifiable look to it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with not having a banner. If you do have a banner, it should add to your shop and the vibe that you're going for, and not take away from it. So you're doing a great job with that, Eva. And I also love your shop title here, because I can see that you're optimizing for outside search engines by using some keywords for your shop, some primary keywords. You've chosen vintage brass, blue and white porcelain, and vintage decor. That's perfect, because you've identified 3 keyword phrases here that really kind of touch on what you have to offer. And then what you want to do with those keywords is you want to repeat them in different places in your shops, because that helps reinforce to those outside search engines like Google that what it is that you have to offer. So if you haven't already, you want to put this in your about section, your announcement, and also in various places throughout your site, like in some of your listings. You want to do it in a natural way, written for humans whenever possible. So really good job with that. Same thing with your shop, your section titles here. The same idea stands. You want to optimize this for those outside search engines. As far as we know, Etsy doesn't look at these areas as of yet for their algorithm in their search, but the outside search engines do. So I think you've done a really great job picking some good section titles here, like vintage brass planter. You might add vintage here. So if you can, vintage rattan items, just to make it a little bit more specific in a searchable term. And same here with lamps. You might say vintage lamps, or vintage brass lamps, if that's specifically all you have. The more specific you can be, the better, because it narrows down that search potential. So if someone's looking for something specific, they're more likely to find your item. So we know that when somebody first starts kind of looking for something, in whether it's Google or Etsy or whatever it is they're searching, they tend to look broadly at first. So they know that they want a lamp, and maybe they start to look at lamps. They just search for brass lamp, we'll just say. They start to look for brass lamps, and then they see some vintage brass lamps. They may not have been thinking about vintage lamps yet, but they see some vintage ones in their brass lamps search. And so then they start typing in vintage brass lamps, and then that narrows down. So at that point, they're looking at different vintage brass lamps, and they realize they really like ones with a lot of, detail. I don't know. I'm coming up with this on the spot. But so let's say next they type in vintage, detailed vintage brass lamps. That's a bad example, but you kind of get the idea. The more when somebody is searching very specifically, they're more likely at that point to buy because they've already narrowed it down. So when you can be more specific, then you can catch more of those people at that stage in their buying process to find your items and actually buy them. So hopefully that makes sense. And really the only thing that I would add before we get further down in your shop here is I would love to see, I always recommend that you have a picture of yourself, your beautiful face. This is a great place for it right here. And also, where the shop owner spot is, and also down below where you list your shop, what is it called? Members, your shop members. So your face here and your face up here would be great if you can take that leap and add that, because what that does is that takes full advantage of the platform that Etsy is, which is really a unique platform in that it allows us to have those personal connections with our customers that you really don't get in most other online platforms. So when we take advantage of that, we can really increase our potential, connections with our customers. And when we can do that, we can, they're more likely to trust us and buy from us. They're also more likely to come back, as well as talk about us to their friends on social media and that kind of thing, which will get more attention for your business. So that's just my thoughts on that. Okay, jumping down to your announcement, this all looks really good. I would just add your keywords that you have in your shop title at the top of your announcement. So you could say something like, Evika sells vintage brass or specializes in vintage brass, blue and white, porcelain, and other vintage decor. Something like that. That's a natural way written for humans. And when you can put it in different places in your shop, like I already mentioned, it helps reinforce that for those outside search engines. So I do recommend you put it at the top of your announcement. And also, just like I mentioned, or just like I stated it, how you would put it in your announcement, you also want to put that in your about section, which I don't think that you have. That's definitely something that you could add to your shop to help bring in some more brand personality and help your customers connect with you just a little bit more. And then also having the about section gives you more space to bring in those keywords and help optimize your shop, your search for those outside search engines. Okay. I mean, your photos are just gorgeous. They're just really, really pretty. And also, what I want to say about your photos is that even though they're not all, you're not using the same background in every one, and some of them are completely white backgrounds and others bring in some detail, like this cute monkey here. But that's perfectly okay because it's more about composition, your overall look and feel, than it is any one individual photo. And that's actually kind of not exactly true because that individual photo is super important too. But what I mean is about how the cohesiveness of your photos and your backgrounds and that kind of thing. As long as they go together and complement each other, they don't have to necessarily be exactly the same. So think composition when you're thinking about the different backgrounds that you use. And you have a lot of white space in your in your backgrounds. And I just really think they all kind of go together and complement themselves well. You have a lot of these, natural rattan elements and the plant, and they just all go together nicely. I don't know how else to say that. Okay, down to your policies. Kudos on having them filled out. And the only thing that I would recommend here is I always recommend to accept returns, exchanges, and cancellations, all three of them. And I challenge you to, if you're on the fence about doing that, or if you're nervous about it, it's perfectly understandable. But think about how many people have reached out to you, since you started selling and asked for a return or exchange. And then, because most people aren't going to look at your policies to see if you accept them, they're just going to reach out to you. So think about how many people have reached out to you to ask for a return and exchange, and then weigh that and see if it's worth it to you, or if you think you can make that leap to accept that as a risk, when what you're doing by accepting returns and exchanges is you are potentially removing a barrier for some people who might not buy from you because you don't accept returns or exchanges. So is it worth taking on the risk to open up your possibility of getting more sales? That's what you have to think about. And then, not a huge deal, but you might want to think about adding some FAQs. It's a great place to bring in some more of your brand personality, just like your about section. And then also to anticipate your buyers' questions, that you get frequently. Because the more questions that you can answer for people without them actually having to reach out to you, it's not saying it's gonna prevent them from reaching out to you, but sometimes people don't want to even take that step. So if you can answer any questions on the front end that come up often for you, the more you can do that, the better. All right, so I chose this item here to go ahead and do an item review for you. It's a beautiful item, and also I love how that you're kind of honing in on a niche, and you have a few different things that you offer, but you're being very specific, and those things go together, right? Like brass goes together with this blue and white. You can see that aesthetic kind of all come together. So I really like how you are narrowing in on that. You seem to have found your niche, and I think that will work really well for you. Because what happens when you can do that is you can easily find who your people are that like what it is that you offer. You can, market to them. It's who is going to be following you on social media. They're going to like the other things that you offer. So they're going to be looking for that because you have a style going, and that's going to attract a certain type of person. So they're going to be more likely to come back to you too. And there's a lot of other benefits to narrowing in on a niche. So really good job there. Your photos are excellent. I really couldn't critique them. You have so many great lifestyle photos here. I don't think there is anything that you necessarily need to add unless, maybe you want to show... Okay, you might want to kind of show a little bit more, kind of get a little bit closer to the item so you can see a little bit closer detail. The other thing that you might think of is adding in something about your process, like a process photo. Maybe that's you, in your office, or something that really complements your, your business and your brand. Etsy has been kind of nailing home lately that the different types of photos that you want in your photos, and one of them that they keep hitting hard on is that type of process photo. So for vintage sellers, I think that means, you in your natural environment, in your home office, or even out, if you're at a barn picking or something and that fits with your brand, then that would be a great photo of you to include in your listings too, not just in your about section, because that helps people connect with you. And we talked about how valuable that is earlier. And then the other type of photo that Etsy's really pushing lately is packaging photos. So I know that's hard for vintage sellers, especially if you package a lot of larger items. But if you have any type of special packaging that you do, or special inserts that you include that, is on target with your brand and highlights what the person will receive, what they can expect from you. Those are good photos to add in your items as well. Your title looks good. The only thing I would suggest is separating it out with a comma right after jar. So large blue and white porcelain pumpkin jar, blue and white, I don't know how to say that word, gourd shaped jar. But you probably don't need to repeat blue and white. It's not going to hurt you if you do. But if you want more space in your title, you don't need to include it twice. And then also, just to kind of expand on why I'm saying use a comma, Etsy recently made a point to tell us that commas are really the separator that they're recommending. That's kind of a newer thing because they didn't used to give that advice at all. But you definitely, according to Etsy, do not want to be using dashes because that can negate the word. And in a search, that can be not a good thing. So don't use dashes, but use commas to separate, and that'll kind of separate this and make it a little bit more readable for your customers as well. And then if you wanted to add a third phrase here, I would recommend adding something for who this is for, or who it would make a good gift for. So boho home decor, or gift for porcelain collector. I don't know if that's a thing, but whatever it is, you can add a third phrase. If you do add a third phrase, that's a good one to add, either who it's for or who it makes a good gift for. Okay, one thing I thought was really interesting here, I clicked on your materials and I saw that you have all kinds of keywords packed into your materials. And that's a very unique thing that you're doing. And I don't necessarily think it's bad in any way at all. I'm just more curious to see how that's working for you. And I noticed you have it in some and not others. So you could kind of even do a test and see, if that's helping to bring you more sales. If it is, comment below, let us know. I'd be interested to find out. I don't think you necessarily need to repeat things so much. So like blue and white, blue and white, blue and white. You repeat that a lot. And the thing is that search engines will pull out the blue and white no matter where it is. So unless you have something that is such a specific search phrase that you want it all together, you don't necessarily have to repeat all those things so many times. Just an FYI there. It's not as if it's a bad thing. The only thing that has me kind of questioning this strategy is, since these aren't materials, you're not exactly using the section for what it's intended for. I 100% have not heard anything about that being a negative thing, but just a heads up, because search engines tend to not like when you trick a system. So I guess my thinking goes to like this, like how Etsy's told us that unless something is very holiday specific, don't choose that holiday, in your attributes. So like if you're selling a Christmas ornament, that goes on your Christmas tree, then yes, select it as Christmas for the holiday attribute. But if it's a blue and white porcelain jar, like this item, for example, and obviously I'm just using this as an example, not that you're doing this, but you don't want to, even though this could make a good Christmas gift, right? I mean, anything could make a good Christmas gift. You wouldn't choose the Christmas attribute because it's not Christmas specific. And they want you to use their attributes and everything that they give accurately. So that's my only concern here. Again, I'm not going to tell you it's a bad thing because I don't know that for sure. It's just something to keep an eye on, and just kind of giving you a heads up there. Okay, and onto your description. You do a really good job of including your keywords here in a natural way, written for humans, right at the top, which is perfect. Blue and white, again, that word, porcelain pumpkin jar is hand painted in a lovely floral motif. Floral motif is another good keyword. not in your title. I was going to check to see if it's in your tags. I would probably add that to your tags as well here. You might even take out, or combine some of these. So you have blue, white porcelain here, blue, white gourd, large blue, white. So maybe take out blue, white gourd. You could do hand painted gourd or something like that. Add the gourd part up here maybe. And then here you could open yourself up for another keyword. So in this example, it would be putting floral motif, just to attract anyone who might be searching for a jar like this that is in a floral motif or anything in a floral motif. You describe its condition, which is good. And you also give a suggestion of how it can be used. And imagine a bouquet of tulips, peonies, or goldenrod. I love that because you are letting your customers kind of imagine it in their life with that beautiful, floral centerpiece. And I even noticed that you do have some of your items pictured with pretty floral arrangements, which is really, really smart. But even just saying it kind of gives a little bit of the same effect where you're helping people being able to envision these items in their life, and doing that makes them more likely to buy. So it's a great thing to do in your descriptions. And then it measures 9-inch, 8.75-inch. I would expand on this a little bit. Even though you have it here, you could even just copy and paste this down here because this is a little bit unclear, what belongs to what. So I would bring this down just in case someone's not looking up there, since you do mention the dimensions. And then all sales are final. Again, I'm going to put my 2 cents in there that this is probably hurting you in some way, even if just a tiny way. But those tiny things add up. So if one person says that and says, well, I'm not comfortable with that, I'm going to go look elsewhere, that's just one person, but those add up. And so in the long run, you would be doing yourself a much better benefit by taking the risk and accepting returns. Just my 2 cents. Okay, so dun, dun, dun. I love how you include the links back to your own shop and items, the rest of the blue and white items, which is perfect because if somebody is looking at this, they're probably, very interested in this style. So if you can keep them on, even if they think, oh, this isn't exactly what I'm looking for, or I like it, but not quite there yet. If you give them a suggestion to go look at your other blue and white items, well, then maybe they'll find something else of yours that they like rather than going back to the Etsy search and starting there again, or their Google search or wherever they started from. Okay. And you also put them back to your shop, link them back to your shop. Also a good strategy. You can do one or both. You can also refer them back to, another item that might complement it that they might want additionally. So you can try and upsell them. And I think that your description is really great. I also love that you ship really fast, 1 to 3 business days. The faster you can ship, the better you're going to do, really. Because again, people want their items quickly, and there are, of course, some people who are going to be willing to wait, but that starting with one person, adding up to 2, 5, 10, and who knows, how many else that you have lost if you can't ship quickly. So always ship quickly when you can. We already talked about your tags, but just another quick look. The only thing that you want, or that I would change here, is to leave out the one word tag. So, Etsy's told us time and time again that they don't suggest one word tags, and really the primary reason for that is you're wasting space, so you're wasting opportunities to be found. So think of it that way. I like that you have gift for her. Maybe a good one for, especially because we're coming up on Valentine's Day and also Mother's Day, you might say gift for wife, just to be a little bit more specific. I'm not saying take that one out, but if you want to switch it out somewhere else, add some, other tags in some of your other listings, or another one here, it could be something like gift for spouse or sweetheart gift. And you also, I would recommend that you really hone in on some of your style keywords. So like boho decor probably would be a good one for you to use, and anything else that describes the style that you're selling, and use those in your keywords, titles and tags especially. All right, so thank you, Eva, for volunteering your beautiful shop. I'm going to link to her shop below so you can go check it out as well. And if you are, again, wanting to get your own free review for your Etsy vintage shop, all you need to do is become an Etsy Junkie. Everything you need to know is in the notes below. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.